It's a sad fact that Honda spent no effort and no thought in designing and creating the adjusters for the Honda NC. Pathetic bit of pressed metal. Very ugly. So some time ago I made some reasonably better adjusters out of aluminium, but they were never really all that good. So today's project is to build some new and improved ones that are really bling-worthy. So the first step is to do some complicated drawings and put down some measurements. As I don't understand the ancient imperial banana type measurements, everything I'm writing down will be in millimetres. Because as everyone knows, millimetres is a vastly improved measurement system, to the point where even a dummy can understand it. That's why I'm using it. So by quickly speeding up the measurement process and writing it all down on a piece of paper, I'm just about ready to embark on my excellent adventure for the day. My chain's new, so I know that the measurement that I'm measuring now, 15 millimetres, could be used up with the new adjusters if I choose to have them that thick. I'm going to have 3 millimetres that goes inside, and I've got a total of 15 that can be available if I need it. And the bolt is 8mm. Last thing I want to do is measure the larger of the two nuts, and you'll see why later on. That's 16mm. So now it's off to the shed. I have a milling attachment to my lathe since I last made these adjusters, and that's what I'm going to be using today for my new and improved version. I have a piece of 10mm thick aluminium that's 80mm wide, and so I'm going to measure this off and then cut it long ways, and that will be the rough measurements for the two adjusters. I'm making it bigger than it needs to be, of course, because I'm going to mill them down nice and smooth and square. So it's off to the bandsaw. I found that just using a bit of ordinary bath soap on the blade really helps with cutting the aluminium. Stops it sticking to the blade and getting stuck in the teeth. Now I've got the pieces roughly cut out, I can start using my magical new machine. There's a couple of nice smooth edges, and then there's the cut edges, so I'll start with the smooth edges as the reference, stick them both in the milling machine together, and then I can use the face cutter to cut them nice and smooth and square. I found that any process that involves the milling machine really is a long, drawn-out process. But that's fine, I'm retired, and time's not a problem. Alrighty, let's check our measurement. I think I'm after 36. I've got 36.97, so I need to take a mil off it. With the cutter just touching the work, I'll just zero the measurer, and now, zero it, and now I can dial in the extra that I want to take off. Because the mill's attached to the lathe, I can use the lathe's power feed to feed the material underneath the milling cutter. Now that I've got two parallel faces, I'm going to put the pieces individually sideways and then mill the sides of them. This way I get a nice rectangular product. I'm changing the face mill for a conventional end mill, just a 2-flute one because that cuts better on aluminium. Unfortunately, my little hobby lathe doesn't have a power crossfeed, so I've got to do this bit by the hand. But that's okay, doesn't take too long. That does a pretty nice job. Now for the other three sides. Right, let's give that a measurement, see where we're at. Fortunately with this job I don't need to be super accurate. I'm after 76 I think. Now what have I got here? Yep, that'll do me. Next step is to mill the bit that slides into the swing arm, and I'm going to make this go in 3mm. So I'm actually just going to go 3mm right round the edge. Of course this is all in fast motion. I wouldn't want to make you watch the process in real time. There's a bit of cutting and then a bit of re-measuring and then a bit more cutting till I get right round it. I'm just using WD-40 as the lubricant. Everything works better with WD-40. Well, that looks alright. A little bit of deburring, that'll look good. Not that you'll see it, because this bit slides into the swing arm. Before I do anything else, I'm going to drill those centre holes, because I've got some nice sharp edges. I can just do the diagonals and get the centre, and then drill the centre hole out to the 8mm. I also want to drill a larger hole in the face and indent it about 3mm, and you'll see why in a minute. I want to make a little brass washer that actually sits into the face, and then the nut comes up against that washer. Now to drill that larger hole, I don't have any really big end mills and I want the hole to be a flat surface, so I'm going to use my woodworking tools. I also want to put a fancy chamfered edge on it, and again I'm going to use a woodworking tool for this. It's just a small router bit, but aluminium cuts at about the same as a piece of hardwood, so theoretically it should work. I'm drilling the 8mm hole first. This will give the Forstner a bit slightly less work to do when it cuts through the aluminium. I'm going to put the woodworking Forstner bit into a collet. This holds it a bit firmer than just using an ordinary chuck. So, will it work? What's the worst that can happen? Well, actually it's cutting it really quite well. I'm just releasing it just to make sure that no material gets stuck underneath and gets all stuck and sticky. But this looks like it's going to do the job. Well, there you go. Learned something new. I can use my woodworking Forstner bits on aluminium. So the next challenge is, does the router bit work? So I find the right collet for the collet chuck for the router bit and insert that, ready to cut. I'm not at all certain this is going to work, so I'm just using a bit of scrap first. And just in case you're wondering, I'm leaving the guard up. Otherwise I won't be able to get a view from the camera. Well, it seems to be cutting reasonably well, but I need to make a slightly deeper cut sideways. So do that, run it again, and see what it looks like. Well, I don't know whether you can see that, but it's got a rounded profile with a little step. So I'll do that right round my actual adjusters. Having gone right round the four sides, let's have a bit of a look. Bit of deburring required, but I think they'll be fine. That's all the milling done on both the adjusters. So now I'm taking the mill vise off and replacing it with the lathe tool holder because I want to make one more little bit of bling. I've got some brass that I'm going to make the washers out of. I'm after about a 2mm deep step with a diameter of about 17mm, which is just a little bit bigger than the big nut. Running away from that 2mm step, I want a chamfered angle, so I'm just changing the tool so that I can get an angle on the material. Now I'm using the parting tool and just coming in about 1mm from that chamfered angle. And I'm going to put in a step now, and that step will fit into the hole that I cut with the Forstner bit. The step's cut, but before I part off, I want to drill the 8mm hole right through it. Now I can part off the washer, just leaving a couple of mils for that step. That'll fit into the hole that I drilled with the Forstner bit. And yes, brass can be a bit noisy when you part off. And in no time, one washer is done. And here's what they look like. The little brass washer. Just a little bit of bling, not at all required. Fits in the hole. All I have to do now is polish them up. So for polishing, I've just got a Scotch-Brite wheel on the drill, and, and yes, it's catching a bit. I should be a little bit more careful, I suppose. Still, what could go wrong? And now it's off to the buffing wheel. Bit of cutting compound, and then just carefully run the wheel over all of the surfaces. Okay, that's coming up nicely. One last step from the polishing process and we'll be done. The last step is just to use a bit of polishing paste. As you rub on the polish goes black as a reaction to the aluminium that's being rubbed off. So it takes a little bit of polishing with a rag to get that off. The 3 steps of polishing are worth the effort. And the paste stops the aluminium from oxidising, so it tends to stay nice and shiny for quite a long time. And with its little brass washer fitted, it looks $100. Here's the originals. A poor excuse for a wheel adjuster they are. These are the ones I made some time ago and looking very sad. But here's the new and improved version. Ooh, beautiful. It's time for fitting. But before I do that, I'll just give the inside of the swing arm a bit of a squirt with some silicone spray, just to stop the corrosion. So on goes the aluminium plate, fitting inside the swing arm nicely, and then the little blingy brass washer, and then the original adjusters, the 14mm and the 12mm nuts. Here's one last look at the bling that everyone wants, but you can't buy. I think that's a definite improvement over the original. And now I can go out in public without being embarrassed.